listening to PetLifeRadio.com.
Hello! You're listening to Animal Party with your host, Deb Wolf, on Pet Life Radio. And once again, I've got back one of my favorite guests ever, Dr. Stanley Coren from UBC, professor of psychology, author of many, many, many dog books, including The Intelligence of Dogs, but many others as well. And Dr. Stan Coren, he's in a position to talk about pets and people and mental illness and how our minds work and autism and all these sorts of topics like nobody else, because he understands human psychology and dogs. So welcome to the show, Dr. Coren.
Glad to be here, Deb.
I'm hoping to just put some clarity on things, because I know there's a lot of garbage out there on the internet, and I just want people to understand the truth about things. So I saw some clips that you sent me of kids and with autism, kids diagnosed with autism, enjoying therapy with dogs, and actually in a facility where the dogs live with the kids and puppies. And it was just beautiful to watch. And we'll put a clip up of it on Pet Life Radio for those of you who want to check it out. It was just brought tears. Why does that work? What's the combination? What's the magic combination here when you have a kid with autism and a dog?
Well, autism, one of the major symptoms of autism, one of the major problems with autism is communication difficulty. Kids don't communicate. They sort of withdraw into themselves, and because of that, it makes it difficult for them to learn. It makes it difficult for them to become social. And the value of a dog is that, first of all, the child feels in control. They are immediately perceived of as the boss by themselves, and the dogs are not threatening. You know, a dog is not going to tell you, no, that's not the way to say it. The dog is not going to tell you, I want you to do this. And so the child is really in a world where they have the sense of control. And control is the essence of being normal. You know, if you feel that you can control your life and what's going on in your life, then in fact you don't get depressed, you don't get aggressive, and you pay more attention, because if you're in control, then you have to know what's going on around you. So that's part of the reason. The other reason simply has to do with affection. That dog is there for you, giving you affection, and somebody who you can fawn over and pudgy and that kind of a thing. And so if you need a dose of tender, loving care at this moment in time, well, guess what? You don't have to, find the teacher or the therapist or the parent or whatever else. You've got your dog right there.
And that's true for healthy kids, too. You don't have to have, even puberty, even all the things kids go through, divorce, a lot of kids would benefit from that constant cuddle creature in the house.
That's right. And if you ask kids, to describe their family, their favorite people in their family, this is normal kids, they'll very often put the dog ahead of their brothers and sisters. If you ask them what they do with their dogs, you find out that dogs, in fact, are the ones that the kids tell their secrets to and talk to when they feel that the world is being unfair in some way.
As a dog trainer, I have a question about this whole thing and how it works from the dog training point of view. It would be difficult for me, it has been difficult for me, to get a dog to bond with a special needs kid sometimes. Sometimes everybody else in the family is more emotionally connected and more easily affectionate, and it's very hard to get the dog to go to the one person that's least like that, especially puppy. And so I know some dogs must be sympathetic, empathetic, must actually go to that person particularly as a helper kind of a move. But some dogs and puppies would not. They would just go to the most fun person, the most affectionate, loving, loud, interactive person, which usually probably wouldn't be the autistic kid in a family where there's many kids. So how do you deal with that?
Well, it depends on what the psychological problem is that the special needs kid has. And, for example, we know that kids with, learning disabilities, that kind of thing, in fact, can bond with dogs very, very well. And one of the reasons some people have argued is because the dog and the child are sort of thinking at the same level. That means to say they're not over-analyzing things, and they're they're much more involved with sort of the emotional content and what is going on at this particular moment in time, rather than long-term implications and that sort of thing. But sometimes, when there's difficulty, if there's a family with normal kids and special needs kids, sometimes the special needs kids don't get a chance to bond with the dog because the normal kids have taken over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had to recommend things like only, the one boy who's getting least contact from the dog that they've actually got the dog for, I'll say, well, get him to do the feeding, get him to do the walks, get him, so you make him matter. Because he's the one the dog needs, right? And I know that people have this idea that dogs give unconditional love. I don't buy that. I think it's really conditional. You can walk into a house and know immediately who's taking care of the dog by the way the dog listens to that person and cuddles that person and looks at that person and stands between you and that person. I mean, there's so many things they show you. They right away say, hey, this is the person who's in charge of me right here, right here, right here. And it can be a kid. It's going to be that kid, right? That's what you have to do.
But you also have to violate some of the rules. For example, if you have a dog which is serving a therapeutic function, that dog effectively has to be with the target person virtually 24/7. So, that dog sleeps in the room, and even if it wants to sleep on the bed, it doesn't make any difference. That dog is with that person all of the time. So it's not the case that, Freddie is the kid with problems and Eddie is the kid without any problems, so Eddie does not get to walk the dog. Freddie walks the dog. Now, Eddie can go with him, but, Freddie has to be there. It's not, Freddie doesn't walk so well, and you're not going to get very far, and the dog's not going to get a whole lot of exercise. That doesn't make any difference. The purpose there is not for the dog to get exercise. The purpose there is to continue the bonding.
I would worry in that case, and I don't have the situation at home, so I have no idea, but I would worry that the other children would come to resent Freddie. He gets the dog, he gets all the special attention. How come we don't each get a dog of our own? You know what I mean? Like, how do you diffuse that?
Well, I mean, there are several ways to handle that. It's that, if Freddie's going to walk the dog, then Eddie has to go with him, and Eddie gets to hold the leash some of the time, and that sort of thing. So you can sort of share in that way, but the idea is that the target individual, the patient, if you will, has to be there all of the time. So if the other kids are going to play with the dog, for example, the target person has to be there also. That's one of the ways in which you can handle that. I mean, of course, an alternate way is to get two dogs, but that gets to be much more of a hassle. So,
I have a question about autism. Is it diagnosed by symptom, or is it diagnosed by some pointing, blood cause or something diagnosable in a test?
No, it's a behavioral syndrome. In fact, actually, it's a whole range of diseases. So we refer to them as the autistic spectrum diseases. And they can run from fairly mild things like social withdrawal to very major things where the child simply doesn't speak. It's not that they don't have the ability to speak, it's just they don't.
How often do you think is it ADHD and autism, are they misdiagnosed in kids that really maybe present that way, but there's some other cause?
I mean, misdiagnosis is always a possibility. You have to recognize that in psychology, it's very often the case that you are not dealing with a simple problem, with one thing. And the individual can be suffering from several different problems. So, for example, let's sort of step away from autism for a second, but, you can have a schizotypal thing, some sort of fracturing of your personality, and at the same time be depressed. So, depending upon which of those symptoms, which symptoms complex are most predominant, then the individual might be diagnosed as having, some kind of personality disorder or being depressed. So, is it a misdiagnosis or is it a missed diagnosis? So you got one.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Okay, well, we have to take a break. We're going to be back in just a minute with Dr. Stan Coren on Animal Party Pet Life Radio and me, Deb Wolf. And I'm going to ask you when we get back about how to pick a puppy. If you've decided you've got a special needs kid that would benefit from a dog and you go to look at a litter, I just had this happen recently, and there were two puppies they were really honing in on, very different personalities. And, well, we'll find out from Dr. Coren how you know which puppy to pick. Come back to Animal Party in a minute.
before it's over because the best is yet to come. Only losers leave the party early anyway. Party on. Back in a few. Pet Life Radio, the #1 pet radio network on the planet, joins forces with iHeartRadio to put the power of your pets in your pocket. Awesome. Download the iHeartRadio app and rock Pet Life Radio on your phone, on your tablet, on your Xbox, in your car. Pet talk, pet tunes, and fun pet times. Pet Life Radio and iHeartRadio. Positively Possum.
It's dinner time in America, where more pet parents trust PetSmart for natural and expert-recommended foods than any place else. And now, we've added more than 100 new varieties to our already wide selection of your favorite brands, like Simply Nourish, Authority, Wellness, Science Diet, and more. Do what's best for your pet. At PetSmart, happiness in store.
Go to PetSmartDeal.com to find out this week's coupon code and save up to 30% on food, treats, toys, and more. And get free shipping on orders of $49. Go to PetSmartDeal.com. PetSmartDeal.com.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Hello! You're listening to Animal Party on Pet Life Radio with Deb Wolf, your host as always, and I'm partying it up with 6 standard poodle puppies that were born May 18th. They're gorgeous. If you want to see them, you just go to Facebook Camp Good Dog, and there they are. I took them in the pool with my kids to see who the swimmers were. So there's 6 puppies. They're all supposed to be water dogs. But Dr. Coren, they all didn't like the water equally. That's for sure. Right? There was a couple that clung to my kids or tried to get back out of the pool. And then there were a couple that tried to avoid us so they could swim longer, tried to do lengths, completely independent. One tried to jump back in after I took it out. So I think there is something. They're a lot alike. They've got the same mother, same father, a lot alike, same puppy rearing so far. And yet each pup is different, right? So How do you choose a pup when you have maybe a kid with Asperger's or autism or some reason you think a dog will bring this kid out more and socialize more and be maybe safer and a happier kid? Which puppy do you pick? Do you pick the timid, calm one? Do you pick the wild one? Do you go with what I normally recommend for most families, which is something in the middle? What do you do?
Okay, well, there are several rules of thumb. The first thing is when you're picking the breed. Generally speaking, the smaller, less active dog is going to be the better choice when you're looking at a therapeutic dog. It's just, if the dog is active, then it's more likely to get into situations which are problematic and can set things back. And if the dog is smaller, then it's easier to control, especially for individuals who might have difficulty sorting alternatives or making split-second decisions and that kind of thing.
But just so people don't misunderstand, you're not recommending 4-pound teacup chihuahuas as service dogs, right? Where you step on it and it's broke its hip. I mean... No, the dog has to be substantial enough so that it's relatively unbreakable, but... Unbreakable! Because accidents happen, especially with special needs kids, right?
Well, I mean, I'll give you an example. A beagle can be a very good therapy dog for individuals who are dealing with emotional problems. It's not a big dog, and you can control their activity level.
But it's so forgiving. It doesn't hold a grudge, ever. A beagle is like, today is a new day. What are we doing today?
But they also have solid bone structure, which means that if the kid is roughhousing with the dog is not going to break a leg, whereas a papillon might. Mm-hmm. So, you want the dog to be substantial enough so that you don't have to worry about it being injured. But when I say smaller...
So most of the time it's going to be a lab-sized dog, 60-pounder, but you're saying rather than pick the puppy that's going to be 90, pick the puppy that's going to be 60. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
But for example, in dealing with individuals who have visual problems, so the guide dogs, when they started to shift away from German Shepherds, which they did for 2 reasons, because the North American German Shepherds have a number of health problems, especially having to do with that inclined back, and also because they are viewed as being threatening. So, nobody wants to
Which
come
is
here.
Incorrect, right? We found out years ago that they're genetically connected to the herders, not the attackers. But okay, whatever. People are threatened. I get it. That's a movie.
Because those are the dogs which look like the police dogs which you see on sentry duty and that kind of thing. It's just public perception in this case. But anyway, so they shifted to the retrievers. They shifted to the labs and to the Goldens. But then they began to find that, they made wonderful guide dogs, but they began to find that, in fact, sometimes, especially if there are physical limitations in addition, these dogs are just too big. You have a 90-pound Golden, it spins around to go, check something out, and it hits you, and you fall down. It's just the way it happens.
And the tail, too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they had been breeding those dogs down for use as guide dogs. So, in fact, the Goldens and the Labs, which you now often see it's in guide dogs, or the Golden Lab mixes, are much smaller than you tend to see in the general sporting population. So we're looking at, 21, 22-inch dogs at the shoulder.
Wow, that is small. That's more like a medium poodle rather than a standard. That's really quite petite.
No, it's not. Labs were originally designed to be pocket retrievers. It's just the dog which you keep in your house. Oh, hang on a second.
What is that? Oh my! You know what I want to ask you, because I'm trying to identify your dog from the barking. Is it a young puppy of some kind of spaniel breed?
It is a 3-year-old Cavalier King Charles Spaniel.
Oh, I got the age wrong, and I said it was a lonely puppy. That's what I thought. It sounded like it was giving me, "Don't leave me, don't leave me."
He is very well bonded to me, but we have people, as I said, fussing with the house, and that's what he got tangled in. He got tangled in some of the wire, which was electrical wire, which was in a corner, when I had to sort of stop and untangle.
People really ought to know that even an older dog, even a trained dog, if you're doing work to your house, if things change, if people are visiting, there can be dangers you don't normally anticipate the dog can get into. So you really got to be around, or take your dog with you, or kennel him up safe, because they might leave the door open. The cat might get out. They might decide they're going to do a tune-up on their car and leave a puddle of antifreeze and kill your pets. You just don't know what they're going to pull. So they're not pet people. They might not think about it. So you got to be careful when you've got different things happening. And I just heard on the news, Dr. Coren, it was so sad. 18 children have died already in closed cars this year in United States. 18. And the usual number's around 40. So there's going to be more. And there was a break-in in Texas where these people in a shopping mall literally broke out this boy and girl babies from the back of a car while the mom was having a haircut just yesterday. People, do not leave your animals in the cars. Don't do it. Any animal, any kid, when it's hot, just don't do it. Take them with you. Okay, so Dr. Coren, you are explaining things to us about size of dogs, and so bigger isn't always better, smaller isn't always better, which I know people are always looking for the tiniest puppies nowadays, and sometimes that can come with some health problems. If you pick a real tiny puppy in a litter that's noticeably half the size of the others, I'm not sure that's the safest bet, especially if you want the dog to be solid and working. This is going to be a needy puppy. I kind of recommend people go with something more middle of the road, especially if they've got some work ahead. But you're saying smaller's better?
I'm saying if you have a breed, which you're deciding on, and we're talking very specifically here for dogs which can be used with special needs kids, then generally speaking, the dog which is a bit smaller and less active is going to be a good bet. And you got to remember that, when you look at the statistics having to do with the dogs which are relinquished to shelters, the 4 major reasons are aggression is number 1, excessive barking is number 2, house soiling is number 3, and difficult hyperactivity and difficulty to control is number 4. Well, the reason a dog is difficult to control is because it's very active and it's so big that you can't control it through its activity. So, that's one of the reasons why you have to be careful when you're picking these. It's like the case that, there is no reason in the world why an Irish setter could not be a guide dog, except for the fact that they bounce, and they bounce, and they bounce.
And they glide. They don't walk, they glide. Like standard poodles prance. Our setters float down the runway. They're runway models every minute of every day. How's my hair? Yeah. No.
But,
and is there a bird in the sky? Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Blind Man. I saw a bird. Excuse me for a moment. You don't mind, right? Yeah, no, that's not going to work.
Yeah, so it's not that they're lacking in intelligence and work ethic or that sort of thing. It's just, they're bigger, active, strong dogs, and so it's Wait
a minute. While we're on the Irish Setter topic, I want you to dispel this myth or shed some light anyway. People think Irish Setters are stupid, okay, and they think they're stupid because they think, and I'm not making this up. This is what people tell me. They think that their brain is rubbing against their skull. And that's why Irish Setters are stupid, because their heads are too small. Can you help me out on this one? Don't tell me you haven't heard this, because I hear this all the time.
Well, first of all, field Irish Setters do not have the narrow head. But the people tend to think that Irish Setters are stupid is because they are difficult to train in the early stages. And the reason for this is they're very, very active, and they have an extended puppyhood. I agree
with that. Yeah, they're very silly for a long time.
I always tell people that the breeder will give you your dog at the agreed upon time, but you just got to remember the brain is back ordered by 18 to 24 months, because that they do have. You don't get the
brain till later. Oh, that's funny. You get the body of the puppy. The brain comes later.
They do have this extended puppyhood, but you got to remember that if you get an Irish Setter, by the time the dog is 4 or 5, you're going to be writing poems about it. I mean, they turn into these absolutely marvelous dogs, but you have to survive their puppyhood.
Okay, explain this one to me. I knew an Irish Setter when I was a kid. Its name was Rusty. Yeah, okay. A girl, Irish Setter, female, owned by a lovely family, lots of kids. They'd always had dogs after too. This dog used to come down their winding staircase and run right into the wall. But not once. Pretty much every time the doorbell rang. Doorbell would ring, and it did this once as a puppy, possibly by accident, but it almost seemed on purpose. It would come running down the stairs and run right into the wall. You almost felt bad ringing the doorway, because, oh my God, she's going to go thump. You'd hear her, smash, and then she'd come greet you a little bit dazed. So what was going on with that?
What was going on with that is that dogs really don't think about the future. They think about the present. So the doorbell goes, and they hit the gas pedal, and now they're flying down the steps, and their brakes are just not as good as their gas pedal. So that's what you're dealing with.
It was like a cartoon, but as she got older, you felt really bad for her, Didn't want to make her hit her head. Oh, poor Rusty. Yeah. Well, they were burgled once. And Rusty did not protect the house. Rusty was let out, and she was roaming the neighborhood. So what do you find with that? I get people asking me that all the time. Will the standard poodle puppy I'm buying from you protect the house? And I say yes, and it will bark. It will definitely bark if someone tries to do harm to you. But are there some breeds that just won't?
Yeah, you have to remember there are two, if you want the protect the house kind of a thing, there are two kinds of dogs which you have. You have watchdogs, which sound the alarm, and guard dogs, which actually physically guard you. And poodles are, in fact, watchdogs. I mean, they will sound the alarm, but they won't physically protect you. And a Chihuahua can be a watchdog. I mean, it would sound the alarm. So a guard dog, so a dog which is actually going to guard you, is much more like our working dogs. It'll be something like a Boxer or a German Shepherd or a Great Dane or something like that. The dogs, a Doberman is sort of the perfect guard dog kind of a thing. But watchdogs come in all varieties. I mean...
Well, you know what? I want to ask you, because we're veering off topic, and I know I did that, but for special needs, what are the breeds? Can you get a dog to help your kid that will also protect your house, or is that not a possibility?
I don't think that's a possibility.
You can't get a standard poodle, so an alarm dog that will also be a good, like a hybrid, sort of?
Yeah, a standard poodle, can be a watchdog, but they are not reliable watchdogs. That's not their thing. They don't have that territoriality. They don't have a good watchdog. Guard dog is very territorial and is basically not highly sociable.
Akitas, you're talking. The ultimate, right? An Akita is sort of the archetype. And that would not make a good service dog, because there's no way it's going to be tied to your kid and walk through a busy schoolyard and be happy about it.
That's right. And the same thing goes with Dobermans are a great example of that. German Shepherds are an example of that. They are wonderful, bright dogs, good working dogs and that sort of thing, but they're not kissy-faced, and they're not going to provide necessarily that emotional support that the child needs.
Well, we're going to take a break here, and when we get back, I want to ask Dr. Coren, if a family's out there with an autistic kid or special needs kid and they're thinking of getting a dog for the kid, what if they already have a dog? Or what if they want a dog that's for the other kids, or that guards the house, or maybe they just have a different set of needs, a pocket dog? Can they have two dogs and have a working dog and still make this happen? Okay, stay tuned to Animal Party on Pet Life Radio with Deb Wolf. We'll be back in a second.
Don't go anywhere, because the best is yet to come. Stick around.
Dogs leave fur wherever they go. It collects all over the home. There are many tools designed to stop dog hair spreading, but their effectiveness varies, and afterwards you have to clean the tool, then the floor. With the Dyson Groom Tool, you simply deploy the bristles, then gently brush the coat. Loose fur is removed, while dead skin and allergens are captured by the vacuum. And to clean up, you simply release the trigger.
To get this awesome Dyson Groom Tool, go to DysonDeals.com. That's DysonDeals.com.
Hi, this is Marcy Davis and my service dog Whistle, and we're your hosts of Working Like Dogs on Pet Life Radio. Working Like Dogs is the show where you can learn everything you ever wanted to know about working animals or working dogs. Whether you're a member of a working dog team, or you've just seen a working dog or animal out at the mall or the grocery store, and you're curious about how these amazing animals work with their human partners, then Working Like Dogs is the show for you. Join us for the inside scoop at Working Like Dogs on PetLifeRadio.com.
Let's talk pets
Let's talk pets
on Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
You're inside the VIP room.
With the hottest party in town.
Back to the party.
Let's go.
Hello! You're back on Animal Party, Pet Life Radio with Deb Wolf, and with me is Dr. Stanley Coren, author of many books, including The Intelligence of Dogs, and today we're talking about psychology, because he's a professor of psychology at UBC, where I went to school years ago. Seems like just yesterday, Dr. Coren. It's so beautiful out there.
It is indeed.
Yes. Well, okay, so if somebody already has a dog, or they're going to get a special needs dog, maybe a retriever, a calm, easygoing retriever that they're going to train to take care of and bond with their special needs kid, can they have a household Rottweiler or a Golden that just isn't trained, their old dog? How does it muck it up, or does it work together?
It makes it more difficult. I mean, it's doable. I mean, we know that, in fact, something like 26% of all dog owners also own a second dog. So, that sort of thing is quite doable. You just have to be a little bit more careful about it. So you don't want your guard Rottweiler to teach your special needs assistance dog to bark all the time. And
dogs do teach each other things, don't they?
Oh, yes, they do model behavior on each other. So what you have to do, and this is really important, and it's one of the things which we always talk about when people make the mistake of getting two litter mates at the same time. You have to designate that, in fact, this dog belongs to this person and that dog belongs to that person. And those dogs basically have separate lives, although they're living in the same household, because there's a different individual who's responsible for it. So,
and different tricks, different commands. That's what I find. Even with two dogs where neither is a working dog, they get jealous of each other if they're doing the same thing all the time, competing all the time.
Yeah, they obviously have to get along with each other just for the safety and civility of the household. But in fact, it is the case that one individual has to be responsible for one dog and the other one has to be responsible for the other dog. So the special needs kid has his dog. That's his dog. or her dog, and the other dog belongs either to one or two people in the rest of the family. And that's difficult in times, sometimes for people to sort it out. I mean, I feel like playing today, and Freddie, who's the special needs person, his dog is there, and, I want to see whether he can fetch a ball. Well, I mean, Freddie's going to have to agree with it before you're going to get to do it. It's not that, you just want to run out and see whether this new ball is something which is going to attract him.
That's going to be hard on the parents or on anybody who has to see the puppy missing out. The special needs dog maybe not getting the perks. That's a little tricky. But I guess you can even it out at nighttime when everybody's asleep. If you're the mom and you've left the dogs, you can take them for a walk, right? Okay, so I'm thinking about when I see kids playing, and I've taught Sunday school now for almost 20 years, so I see different groups. There's often, almost like a litter of puppies, there's often one or two that are quite speedy and one or two that are a little slow and some in the middle. And you could see how if we lived in a primitive way, the kid who never stops would be very valued because he could hunt like nobody else. Or the kid that I always see in detention at school, I notice, never stops on the basketball court. That kid will dive for the ball. That kid is awesome at trying in sports. He's not so awesome at behaving himself in school. Sometimes I think kids like that get diagnosed or labeled or treated or medicated when really it is a natural part of our tribe or pack. And I just want to ask you about that. Do you think that's happening?
Well, there are personality characteristics which people have, and they are sort of varied for a whole bunch of reasons. I mean, evolution wants us to have these things be varied because, you want some people who are going to be caretakers, and some people who are going to be leaders, and some people who are going to be fighters, and some people who are going to be conscientious workers, and that kind of a thing.
Yeah, and the guy who stays up all night to watch The Village. Well, that's not the person who's really mellow. It's not.
Well, but the whole idea is finding a match for the person's personality and the situation which they find themselves in. So, for example, the guy who is going to excel as a linebacker in a football game might not be the person who you want to be a caretaker in a nursery school. There's a different set of traits involved in this.
It just seems like this whole, that they're trying to fit these kids into this, like, square peg type round hole, and when they don't fit, it just seems so quick. Some of the kids I've seen diagnosed this way, I mean, they definitely seem different, but it just, the idea that they're not normal and the other kids are normal and there's something wrong with them, I see they're hard to manage and difficult because they never stop, some of them. And I'm talking about the ADHD kids. But they're so gifted when they're not on meds. They're so interesting. And, if you can give them energetic learning, they're really quite manageable, I've found. So, and not always, not every kid, but it just seems to me there's got to be a whole whack of them being misdiagnosed just because they're hard to handle.
Well, I think that the ADHD diagnosis is being overused. Nowadays, any kid who acts out in class for any reason, is apt to get the tag that this is, a kid with a problem. And in fact, medication might be, prescribed. But the tag as them having a problem is usually from the individual who has to control them, who has to, have them in class, who just really wants an easier, more tractable class full of kids. I mean, I'm sure that if we were dealing out these diagnoses in the same way that we are today, that when I was a kid in grade school, I probably would have been tagged by it because, I was very, very active, and partly because I was very, very bored. I mean, they were trying to teach me reading in first grade, and I was already reading at a fifth grade level, and,
I have a similar history, and being, labeled as hyper. I didn't have the ADD part, just the hyper part. But being hyper meant in university, I could do such long hours, I could cram like nobody else. Being hyper meant good things for me in my life. And, Ritalin wouldn't have helped me out that way at all. So I really caution people, if they're listening to the show and they think medicine is the only answer, maybe it is, but maybe it isn't, right? There's got to research it all the way. I still don't quite understand why dogs are such a good match for these specific kids with autism or on the autism spectrum. Is it a duty the dog has, or does the dog, like the seeing eye dog, become so invested in the person that it sympathetically cares for them out of love and caring? Or is it a duty? Is it just doing its job?
Oh, no. If there's not an emotional bond, it's not going to work. It's not the dog wakes up and says, well, I'm not in the mood, but I've got to be empathetic today. It doesn't work that way. There has to be a bond. Without that bond, you're not going to have a decent therapy dog. And that's one of the reasons, for example, that in cases where you're getting service dogs of various types, like hearing assistance dogs or guide dogs for the blind or that sort of thing, before that dog is turned over to a person, they are brought in and will often spend a week to 3 weeks, bonding with a dog under the supervision of the people who had been training the dog previously. And that's vital, because if the dog doesn't have that bond, if you're not suddenly the focus of that dog's existence, they're just not going to do the work. And remember, in cases where we're dealing with autistic kids, or we're dealing with kids with stress-related problems, or adults with stress-related problems, there's a huge research project which has been funded by the U.S. Congress on the effectiveness of dogs.
On soldiers?
Yep, that's right, for coming back with post-traumatic stress syndrome. For that to work, that dog has to be bonded to that particular individual. In many respects, certainly when you're dealing with these dogs involved in animal-assisted psychological therapy, it is in fact the emotional support which the dog is providing, which is a key component in the whole game. So the dog must be bonded. It's not the fact that we are going to hire you and you are going to be a therapist.
Okay, so we're kind of coming to the end of the interview, and I definitely want to have you back on because there's more topics I want to ask you about. And maybe we'll even touch on soldiers and PTSD and how the dogs, interrupt their nightmares and go circle them in crowds and help them see that when they're having flashbacks, if the dog's calm, then obviously things are okay. They're mistaken, that sort of thing. So we'll talk about that maybe on a future show. But because I know a lot of people are going to be listening to this show, people with autism in their lives, I wanted to ask you, what are the good breeds and how can they get a dog like this? Is there any funding available? And what if they're going to go out and buy privately, can they train it themselves? Where would they go? We've got listeners all over the world with special needs kids who need to know what to do about this.
Well, there are a number of organizations which are training dogs for specific conditions and specific syndromes. Generally speaking, the dogs of choice seem to be nowadays labs and Goldens. Can you train them yourselves? I think that there are some programs which have appeared in print which talk about how you train an assistance dog for these sorts of things. If you want to have a dog who is going to be not from one of the training agencies, you just really have to emphasize that dog must be very sociable and must be well bonded to the patient.
I say bomb-proof. You want the puppy that's not afraid of anything, that doesn't startle easily, that isn't causing mischief, but isn't fearful and lingering behind either. The puppy that's just easygoing, laid back, pills can drop on the floor and it's not going to swallow them in a second. Stuff like that.
Yeah, you want this sort of completely socialized dog. And the thing about, as you said, if pills are dropped on the floor, the dog doesn't go for it. That's one of the reasons why you want that slightly less active dog.
Yeah,
gives you a chance to mop them up.
And a compassionate dog, a dog who's really bonded to the people. So if you're touring at a breeding site and you see these puppies and one is following the people around, that's the one.
Yeah.
Or whining at the gate to go in the house. That might be the one.
Yeah, it's really the sociability of the dogs. There are some psychologists who feel that one of the major things which psychotherapy provides you with is a good, safe friend who you can talk to. And that is in the form of your therapist. So, the dog is basically going to be that sort of good, safe friend. And
the other thing I wanted to say is wherever you are in the world, if there is a Seeing Eye Dog program, you can contact them because sometimes the dogs that don't quite make it get retrained for this. And sometimes it's subsidized. So you may find there's a free dog out there for you if you get your name on a list. But these Goldens and Labs. So now what if someone goes to the local shelter and sees a lab cross or a golden cross, some kind of mutt, looks mostly golden, looks mostly lab, has the padded feet and the round soft mouth. It's a golden, it's a lab, a cross. And it's social, and it's loving, and it's all over them. Is that a good pick?
It can be. It's much riskier. Remember, when you're getting a dog from a shelter, you might be inheriting somebody else's problems.
You might.
I think that, if people are thinking about this sort of thing, there are a number of organizations which provide information. One of the best ones is the Delta Society. You can contact them. I think that they've even got some publications about assistance dogs and therapy dogs, or they can certainly direct you toward someone who has that information. So I would give a shot with them. They're a highly responsible, nonprofit group which does some wonderful work.
Next time you come on, I want to ask you sort of related things. I want to ask you, I find it amazing, and I bet other people do too, that dogs can detect cancer, or that they can tell if you've just had a heart attack, or that a dog on Vancouver Island woke up the kid in the family who was diabetic because her sugar levels had dropped, and he wasn't even, or the dog was a she wasn't even trained, the dog. I want to know how that happened. So will you come on the show in the future and talk about some more of these psychological, animal-related topics?
I'll even talk about the dog which has been trained to detect C. difficile, which is one of those superbugs in hospitals.
Oh, wow. I heard they were using dogs. Someone tried to hire me to train dogs to find bed bugs. But I'm so squeamish. Yes. I didn't want the bed bugs in their little petri. I didn't want anything to do with any of it. I'm just too squeamish. But what a good use. That's amazing.
The Hilton Hotel Corporation has a beagle which does that, which goes from hotel to hotel.
Nice. Okay, so before we go, because we have to wrap it up, I'll have you back really soon, Dr. Coren. Can you tell everybody what your latest book is before we go?
The latest book is called The Wisdom of Dogs.
The Wisdom of Dogs. See, and now there's a whole topic right there. People say dogs are like a 3-year-old kid or a 6-year-old kid, and cats are like a 4-year-old kid. But they're so much more wise than even the wisest humans in some ways. So how can you say that? How can you say that? Their judgment calls, their ability to read situations in danger, their capacity to be in the moment no matter what. I mean, they're like Zen compared to the rest of us. They're way ahead. And
that's a whole nother show, my love.
Okay. What's The Wisdom of Dogs about? Let's give people a bit of a teaser. Can you tease them just a little?
The Wisdom of Dogs is a little book which really has to do with our relationship to dogs and what dogs are capable of and what we think about them. And it's done much lighter tone than most of my other books. It's designed to be a really fun read, but it contains a bunch of information about a variety of topics about dogs, a couple of historical things, and it's one of the books in which I've done all the drawings, and so I think that they're relatively good drawings.
Oh, right on. Yeah, some of your books are very academic. I sit there with a pen and paper taking notes and highlighting, but like Intelligence of Dogs is like that for me. There's just so much in it. I don't want to miss anything. And I've got all these folded, you would hate to see it. It's all folded and dog-eared and, appropriately. But this one sounds like a nice light read. Good summer read for the beach, maybe. If you're going to the beach with your dog, take shade, take water. Feel it first so it's not too hot on his paws. And sunscreen if you've got freckles or pink spots. Well, I think we've run out of time, Dr. Coren.
All right. Well, it was fun talking to you, Deb. It always is.
Yes. Well, thank you, Stan. I hope to talk again soon. Okay. Thank you very much. All right, everybody. On Pet Life Radio, it's been Deborah Wolf, Animal Party, and Stan Coren, my friend from the dog tour 20 years back. We used to go traveling town to town with our dogs and our books and our merchandise, and we'd have tents, and we'd be side by side, and we'd each watch each other's booths so we could go have lunch or take our dogs for a bathroom break. So that's how we first met a long, long time ago. And he's been writing books ever since and coming to the show to enlighten us on topics that are sometimes hard to get the real information on. So thank you for listening today. And if you do have autism in your family and you want a pet, go to the Delta Society because they've got great resources for you and you can find everything you need from there. So until next time, be good to your animals.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.